East Idaho Newsmakers is brought to you by the Bank of Commerce, your bank of a lifetime.
This is East Idaho Newsmakers with Nate Eaton.
Welcome to East Idaho Newsmakers. Thanks for being with us this week. This past week, we had an election here in several cities in East Idaho. And in Idaho Falls, there was a mayoral race, and none of the candidates got the 50% plus one required to be elected mayor. So today we were talking with the two finalists, incumbent Mayor Rebecca Casper and Barbara Hart, who serves on the City Council. We'll begin with Mayor Casper. Thanks so much for coming here.
Thank you for having me.
How has your week been? It's been kind of a little crazy, I imagine.
It has been. You know, it starts off with all the excitement and energy and high hopes of just regular campaigning, and then it shifts to election and election night, election day and election night, and then the aftermath of, you know, trying to pick up, the thread of where do we go from here. So it's been a crazy week.
And there is this ordinance, this law, I guess you could say, that in order to be elected to office, you have to have 50% plus one, which in other states that doesn't apply.
Well, and in other cities, in Idaho, it doesn't apply. Cities have a lot of autonomy in setting their election rules in Idaho, and very few, I'd say less than a handful, have a rule like this.
And you got the majority of the votes on election day, 5,357, 46% of the vote, but not quite that 50%.
Right, it's known as a plurality.
So where do you go from here?
Well, you know, in every instance where we've had a runoff in the city of Idaho Falls, the second election, the runoff election, has less or lower turnout than the election day, the standard election day. And so that's an interesting factor, but bottom line is that we're after votes. This almost becomes, in many respects, just a brand new campaign. May have some leftover themes from the previous campaign, but for the most part, we're going after voters. We just have a narrower field of competition, and but my job is to convince enough voters that I'm the right person for the job, and so that's what I'm doing. That's the plan.
How important are Representative Thompson's votes to you?
Representative Thompson received, 23% of the vote?
23%, yeah.
23. It represents nearly a quarter of our city's voters, and that's important to me just by definition. As far as picking up those voters, yeah, obviously I need to pick up some votes, right? I mean, to do the math, you have to pick up some votes. And I would like to appeal not just to his voters, though I want to strengthen my appeal to voters who turned out for Barbara Hart and who turned out for Mr. Osterhout and who turned out for Mr. Jordy as well. So I'm trying. It's a brand new election.
You mentioned it's a brand new campaign. What's going to be your focus for the next 4 weeks?
You know, we're still kind of talking about some of that. It's there are a lot of good friends I have who want to weigh in, and you know, some are telling me to do this way and do it that way and hit hard on this, or drop that theme, and so it's kind of interesting to try to sort out what's the real messaging that I think is important for our community. And so I can't answer you directly, but because it's just sort of a little bit up in the air and still in a swirl in my mind. But one thing is absolutely clear to me, and that is that I need to continue to represent the positive growth and the positive things that have been happening in our community. I'm convinced that a negative campaign is not what we need and not what most voters appreciate.
And there was talk of the advertisements, the Anybody But Casper movement. What were your thoughts when you saw those billboards and those advertisements?
Well, my thought was, anybody but Casper, that's free speech. You know, that's not necessarily negative. It's the attacking the city's record in ways that are not factual. That to me is not constructive. That to me is what's negative.
And do you have an example of that?
I don't have a list for you. I just know that, or pulling a memo that was written by someone from within the city who was, you know, trying to address a small issue and blowing that into full-blown, that's my policy kind of thing, without ever talking to me about what the policy really is or what the expectations are. I mean, that to me is aimed at low blows, and that resonated with a lot of people who came up to me have been coming up to me for the last few weeks saying, you know, thanks for taking the high road, thanks for not hitting back, thanks for, always trying to message positively. And I have to tell you, that's a big part of what being mayor is being the person who represents who the community is to the rest of the world. And when negative messaging like that is playing on the airwaves, when Pocatello is listening and Rigby is listening and other voters in other areas are hearing these messages, other potential businesses are hearing these messages, they're not getting the right kind of impression of Idaho Falls. That kind of messaging is not leadership. That kind of messaging, it damages our community and some of its prospects for the future. And so it's my job to make sure, as mayor, for as long as I'm mayor, whether it's a short time or a longer time, is to make sure that the good things about our community are out there.
It sounds to me like you plan to run a positive campaign.
Absolutely.
Up until
that I can tell you with certainty.
That you can say. If you could change anything, what would you change to that would have maybe gotten you the 50% plus one?
We had more voters turn out in this election than we did in the last one, and more in that one than the one in years previous. And so that's a good thing. I view that as a positive and something that I'm very proud of, that we have more voters being engaged in this community. And here's an interesting little factoid. I received more votes on Tuesday night than I did 4 years ago. And yet it wasn't enough because of the larger turnout to get us past that 50% mark. That's all rather good. And so I can't remember your question now, but I wasn't.
If you could change anything.
Yeah, I guess I would. I guess wish that I could have turned out another 400 people.
Another 400 people. Yeah, we pulled the numbers. 11,511 people voted in this election, which, based on some rough math, means about a quarter of the adult population in Idaho Falls voted Tuesday. In 2013, 9,500 people voted. So there were about 2,000 more people that voted, and you did receive 300 more votes. Yeah. You mentioned the whole email thing about corresponding the memo that came out. And the position was raised that you told city employees they can't communicate with city council members, to always go through you. Is that a policy? Are they allowed to talk to the council members? How does that work?
Anybody can talk to anybody. We live in the United States of America, right? First Amendment rights apply no matter who your employer is, or at least when the city of Idaho Falls is your employer, you have a right to speak up and speak out. And so what happened early on, and this was like in the first month or two when I came into office, I asked all of the directors to please route their newsletters, their announcements, their broad communications to the council through my office, so that we could, and at the time I was putting out sort of a weekly update to council members, and I was collecting information and data. And that was designed to make sure that I didn't miss out on anything that they were putting out, because sometimes they would send things to council and I wouldn't know what was going out. But it was also designed to just make sure that we had a centralized place for calendar information, because the assistant who works for my office works for council members and for me. And so she was keeping that calendar, wanted all of that information to be centralized. And we clipped along with that for quite some time. And then, I don't know, I think it was late last winter, or was it early this, it was early this winter. We had one department have 3 instances in 1 week, and I think the director may have even been out of town at the time. 3 instances in 1 week where they were sending things to council members, and then I would find out about it later, and it's like, oh, you invited them to that? Well, I didn't know about that, and that happened 3 times. And so I sent a note to the director, even though he was out of town, and I said, can you maybe, get everybody back on track so that the information is going through my office? And I CC'd his 2 superintendents, and one of those, 2 of his superintendents, not all of them, and one of them then put the memo out to everybody, took it upon himself to put it out and say, everything's got to go through the mayor. So it was a different person messaging that, and it was well-intentioned. It was trying to be responsive to what he saw his boss was getting a little pushback on. And so it was not me saying, don't ever have a conversation with anybody on the council, and nothing like that. We have to have council members interacting with directors. We have to have council members interacting with employees in order for them to be able to fulfill their function. They have three roles to play. One of their key roles is oversight, and you can't exercise oversight if you're not engaging. So that has to happen. And it would be unwise, inappropriate, and ridiculous for me to try to curtail those kinds of conversations. It just didn't make any sense to me at all that someone would extract that and then put that out there as news. It's not even a story. It's not true.
Why do you want to be mayor?
You know, I didn't set out to want to be mayor. I was one of those people who was approached. I was approached 3 times in 1 week last year, or not last year, last time around. And my thought was, I can't do this.
And what were you doing at the time? Give us some background. First of all, what brought you to Idaho Falls? You're not from here.
Okay. I married a man who was from an Idaho Falls, born and raised kind of guy. And we moved here because he sort of missed this atmosphere. I hesitated to come here at first. I thought, oh no, I've only ever lived in larger places, and I'm not sure if a small town is for me, a small city. Not sure. And so we went back and forth on that. We were living in Phoenix at the time. I was a stay-at-home mom, and we had 3 children. And his commute had gone in the time that we had lived there from a 22 door-to-door, our house to his office commute, to about a 46-minute commute. We moved here, and his commute went to about 5 minutes. And what does that translate into? That translates into soccer games and being able to sneak over and have lunch with one of the kids at school, or being able to go to a kid's event or activity, or being able to maybe dip back home and then go back to work later to pick something else up that didn't get finished during the day. It improved our quality of home life. And that sold me on Idaho Falls within 15 minutes after getting here. And then over time, I found that my ability to be involved and to be a mom in this community, it's a sweet place. This is a sweet place to raise your kids. So that's what brought me here, and that's what sort of got me a little bit addicted to being here, is that it's just a nice place. And then getting involved little by little in school. Started off with my kids' school, then the school district, and from school district involvement to, at the time, Mayor Jared Furman, who was on the school board, chose to run for the mayor's office. I worked on that campaign. Also got involved with a few things in the community. Started attending Chamber of Commerce meetings, and became involved in water issues, and I was appointed by the governor to serve on the Comprehensive Aquifer Management Planning Committee, which was nicknamed the CAMP Committee, for what the acronym. And so got involved in things. And so then in
3 people approached you.
3 people approached me and suggested that I run. And I pushed back. And then by the time that it was actually 4 people. The last time was 2 people at once. And they took me to breakfast. And I was saying, I can't do this. I need a real job. I was teaching at the time, both at ITech and at BYU Idaho. And I said, I need to support my family. I can't just take a gamble and do something like this. And they pushed me a little bit and said, well, why don't you check with your family? And what have you got to lose? So I went back, and I have 4 children, and I spoke to the kids. And in every case, they were supportive. And I spoke to them individually. And I thought that touched my heart as a mom, to have my kids be willing to take that step. If that was something that I was going to do, they were willing. But I also realized that, hey, I was a teacher of government classes. If I run and didn't win, I would have a great lecture on state and local politics, right? Yeah. And great insight into the electoral process. And if on the other hand, if I ran and won, then I would have a great adventure and a lot of opportunity to continue to serve. I tend to be a volunteeraholic. I do a lot of volunteering, and so I had a lot of reasons to care about our community because I'd been involved in so many things. And
you ran and won, and you've been serving for the past 4 years. Is there anything over the past 4 years that you regret, or that you would change?
I'll tell you that I'm not even sure if I can answer it in terms of regret, or maybe I could put it in the change box, but more I wish I had known box, if we could have one of those. And it would be that I wish I had known a little bit more about personnel management. There is a lot of that that goes into the office of mayor. Idaho Falls has what's known as a strong mayor form of government. And the strong has nothing to do with muscles, right, or strong will. It has to do with strong authority. And in this case, the authority that a strong mayor in Idaho has is they have the hiring and firing authority. They have all of the personnel management. And for me, I don't do a lot of firing. In fact, the city doesn't tend to let people go without cause, and you have to have, documented cause for that. But and I've never personally fired anyone, but the ability or the authority to manage the directors and have them bring issues to you related to their employees and their concerns, that was much bigger part of the job than I ever knew from being an outsider or a volunteer.
Biggest accomplishment, biggest thing you're proud of?
I do think that we have done some good things within the city, government structure itself, for employees in terms of separating their compensation from their benefits and not linking the two. I think that's actually very important. We've also been able to start to get that message really driven home to both employees and to council members who do set the budget, that the cost of living for employees that has to be factored in. There has to be an adjustment for that every year, or they end up taking home fewer real dollars every year. And to me, that's unacceptable. You don't pay your employees less from year to year. As far as another aspect of city, or serving the city as mayor, is that there's this bully pulpit, and that ability to use the position to draw attention to other issues. And there are two that stick out for me. One is helping to put together the mayor's piece of the READY organization, which is the Regional Economic Development organization for all of Eastern Idaho. And to be able to sit with those leaders on that board, those business leaders, and be able to partner with them in ways that benefit the entire region. That to me is very, very important and powerful. And the other bully pulpit thing was the community college. It's not just a touchy-feely education thing. This has to do with our future workforce. This has to do with keeping talent in this area. Formerly, we were in the position of exporting. Most of our best and brightest kids had to go somewhere else. I mean, by definition, you had to go somewhere else to get your higher ed. And once you're somewhere else, it's not always easy to come back, because you start to build and develop connections wherever you are, whatever campus you're on, or whatever community you move to get that education. So to keep young people here, it gives our employers an opportunity to recruit them right out of school here.
We're almost out of time. I want to run through some quick topics, and you can give a quick answer just overall. The school bond.
Yeah, that was a little unfortunate, because it had the effect of making it so that we continue for a while longer with the kids who go to IF high school in particular, not necessarily having the state-of-the-art equipment that they need and the elbow room and the space that they need to be as innovative. Those faculty members are going to have a little harder. Businesses.
A lot of people talk about businesses are fleeing to Ammon and they're fleeing out to the county.
Yeah, that's a framing of the message that was put out by a partisan group. That is not the truth. We've got a lot of business coming in Idaho Falls, and when business does show up in Ammon, I'm thrilled, because we're for regional economic development. A rising economic tide floats all boats. There are Idaho Falls employees that are employed in Ammon, and Ammon residents who are employed in Idaho Falls. We're not in competition with Ammon. We have had a lot of business growth, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks I'll be able to start documenting that. We don't have a mechanism in the city that that if you open up a business you have to go and sign a registry or get on a list. And so we have to create this list on our own, and that's been a little bit tricky, but we don't have a problem in that area. And for someone to portray that as such is an example of that negativity that is actually not helpful to the messaging that we're trying to do for our city.
The state of the police department.
Police department is on a tremendous upswing right now. We have filled leadership positions that formerly had gone unfilled because of a court order. And now that that's gone and we have a new chief and a new process for those promotions, we've got leadership in the ranks now. And we've been able to promote from within, and because we have a lot of talented officers who were not being able to, exercise much leadership or voice. We have a tremendous chief. He has faced labor issues before, but he's also just a real down-to-earth, work side by side with the guys, kind of a leader. And that's just exactly what our department's needed.
Taxes and the tax rate.
Our tax rate is lower than the tax rate in Pocatello. It's lower than the tax rate in Rigby. It's lower than other tax rates right here in eastern Idaho. Our tax rate is not out of control. Again, that's a portrayal that some want to put out there. But when you combine the tax rate with the other benefits that living in the city brings, our low utility rates, which are sometimes not available to others who live in other areas. They don't control all of their utilities like we do here. We're able to offer a smoking deal for people who live in Idaho Falls. It's a lot cheaper to live in Idaho Falls than it is to live in the county and in some of the other surrounding communities. And so again, it's a framing of the message that is inaccurate.
Something you admire about Ms. Ehardt?
I have often told people, and I think I've told Barb this before, we used to have this weird habit of running into each other shopping at Walmart, like between 10 and midnight, because we were both late night people, get things done. And I remember telling her once, Barb, you have such a good heart. And she does, I think, have really pure instincts for the most part. But if she doesn't listen to the right voices, she could get her messaging mixed up.
We thank you, Mayor, for coming in. Before we go, I want to give you a chance to tell people that may not have voted this past time anything that you want to tell them.
That's interesting. I wasn't expecting that. I guess I would tell voters that I am a hardworking person. I defy you to find somebody who's going to put in more hours than I do. You might find somebody who works as hard, but you won't find anybody who works harder. I am an honest person. Will tell you maybe the truth that you don't want to hear, but I'll tell you right, hit you right between the eyes with the facts. I am a fact-based person. I'm a data person. And some people might call that being wonkish, but I want to understand: are we in the right ballpark with our policy? Are we addressing the right needs? I want to know those facts and details before we ever take anything forward. I am someone who is rather competitive. I see the big picture for our region, see the big picture for our city, and I want to make sure that we're always competitive. And so when we hear these messages that say that we're not, it double drives me crazy, because we are actually doing very, very well. And so I've got to find a way to communicate that a little better. Maybe that's one of the things that I need to work on, is being a better communicator. But taxpayers don't want to pay more money to have the city hire someone to do more communicating. We limp by with the public information officer abilities that we have, and hopefully that will be enough to tell the stories. But we're not in the business of trying to tell good news. We're in the business of trying to make good things happen for our city. And so with your help, maybe we can tell more of those good stories. All
right. Thank you very much, Mayor Rebecca Casper. When we come back, Councilwoman Barbara Ehardt will be here. We'll ask her a lot of the similar questions, so stay with us.
At the Bank of Commerce, we understand the hard work, determination, and sacrifice it takes to run a successful business. That's why we're here every step of the way to help make your dreams come true. The Bank of Commerce, your bank of a lifetime.
Welcome back to East Idaho Newsmakers. Joining us now is Barbara Ehardt. She currently serves on the Idaho Falls City Council, but wants to be mayor. And we appreciate you coming in here. So you got about 27% of the vote on Tuesday. What is your game plan between now and December 5th to try to win?
Sure. Well, first of all, everything happened as we actually anticipated. The fact of the matter is, Jeff is a formidable opponent. He has been our state rep for 9 years now. So when Jeff decided to jump in, or Representative Thompson, we knew that in order to win, we'd have to go to a runoff. So that was not surprising at all. And knowing that he would carry a good number of the voters with him. So right now we're working. I have had so many responses from those who said that they had supported Jeff, just as they had for years, but they are 100% on board and behind me. So we just need to keep gathering those people and sharing our message and those things that we see as positive and helpful and needed for our city and going forward. So yes, we're in the process of bringing everybody on board to unite and going forward.
The mayor said it becomes a whole new election, really, for the next 4 weeks between you and her. Is there some sort of message that you plan to hone in on? What's your focus going forward?
Well, I certainly think that my focus getting to this point was key. It's why I ran. When we're talking about transparency and that control and flow of information, we have to remember that all of these offices, all 7 offices, are the people's. And you're never so close to the government as you are when it's local. It's at the local level that we all should be able to be involved. That's how it was intended by our founding fathers. I'm a purist, maybe. I see it as so important that these offices and those of us who represent the people are available, and we're available to be, to listen to them, to hear the ideas, and then specifically to take concerns back one to another, to speak about it, to have real discussions in the council about the people's concern. It can't just be the business of the city and all presentations coming to us and one person more or less controlling the flow of information. That is inherently wrong. So those are things which I'll continue to focus on. And of course, obviously, the taxes and spending has resonated with many people. That's not, again, to say that we can't not do things for our city. Of course we do things for our city. We just have to be wise, and we have to have those conversations about what's next. And what we do next, the council should be engaged in. That's the council's discussion. How next do we spend our money? We also should have the discussion knowing, as Robert Spenlove had said, Zions Bank economist, that wages have remained absolutely stagnant. They have not moved in years. We need to at least have those discussions on behalf of the people. How much do we increase taxes? Do we do it every single year? What is the next need? What is the next priority? Those are discussions that we should be having with the council, and that's what I plan to do, engage the council so that they will perform in the role that they were meant to perform in.
How important are Representative Thompson's vote to you now? Because adding his number with your number, you have it.
Correct. And obviously, if everything played out that way, then, oh gosh, we win. We recognize that, like the mayor said, she's correct. It's a whole new election, and his support, absolutely, obviously. I need the bulk of his support to win. When you listen to how Representative Thompson ran, he ran against all policies of the mayor. He was very clear about that. And so those people who supported him, our messages, if you were to listen to my message and Representative Thompson's message, they are so similar. I just cannot imagine that many of those people would all of a sudden say, I like the policies that Representative Thompson didn't like in the first place. I just don't see it. So we just need to make sure we're communicating the message that it was very much the same message.
If you could change anything over the past, how long have you been? 3 months, 4 months? What would you change? I mean, what would you maybe do a little differently that maybe would have gotten you over that 50% plus one?
Well, I would not have had any other opponents.
Good answer.
I don't think, pending that, that outcome wasn't going to be any different, unless somebody that had leaned more left, like into the mayor, had jumped in. Then, I would have gotten somebody in that would have leaned that way, because pending that, you're going to split the vote.
But you're happy with the campaign you ran?
I am. Are there things that come up here and there that you change? Sometimes you're making split-second decisions, but as a whole, I'm happy with the campaign I ran. Campaigns in and of themselves pit people against people, and that's the hard part. I don't like that part, but these last 3.5 weeks, 4 weeks here, it'll be Mayor Casper and myself, and if I had my druthers, I'd rather say, Mayor, let's go to lunch and talk this out. But we've tried that, and so now we have to present our cases to the people and allow them to have their voices be heard and give us the direction that they would like to go.
Why do you want to be mayor?
I want to be mayor because I have a different vision. I know that I can lead in in a much better direction. I have a background of leadership. I have a background of interacting with people. It's, to be mayor, it is, you have to be able to engage people, empower people. You have to be able to present a vision and get people to buy into that vision. It is very much like sports. You have to be able to motivate people when people are down and when you're behind and when the opponent seems to be winning. How do you rally the troops and move forward? That's what leaders do. I don't have to know about everything in every department, although having been on the city council for the last 4 years gives me a head up that even our mayor didn't have 4 years ago, because I've already been involved. But I don't purport to know what every single department knows and have to have all of that information come to me. Instead, I need to make sure that we're heading in the direction that we need to as a city, and that we're communicating and interacting, and that there will be a reporting to me, but just so we can see where we're going, and a reporting to the council, and we'll be engaged in this together and move forward together, truly together, as your 7 elected officials.
We asked the mayor about the emails that came out before the election. You've served on the city council. She says that anyone can talk to anyone. Any city worker can talk to any city council member, that it's a free country, and that those policies are in place just for scheduling purposes. Serving on the council, are the city employees, were they able to communicate with you? Did you see any issues there? Well,
It's unfortunate that that's the response that she had. It had nothing to do with scheduling. We as city council people could go when we would, certainly directors were a little easier with whom to speak, but I'll give you a quick example. I had the Municipal Employees Association back in April approach me, half scared, to ask if I would consider meeting with their leadership. And my response, not realizing what they're asking, was, well, of course. Surprised that we haven't met with you already. We're in our 3.5 years and we haven't met. I thought that's what we'd do. As I sat and met with them, they made it very clear that they were told that they could not meet with us. They were worried about meeting with me. They were worried that that information would get back to the mayor. And as we sat there and met, they said they'd always had a seat at the table and they were no longer able to do that. And they were very appreciative and shocked that I would sit there and meet with them. And I said, that's what I do. I meet with people. That's what we should be doing. And so that led to another meeting. And then when, if you could have sat in on the Municipal Employees Forum for the council and the mayor, I think there'd be no question, given the questions that they asked over and over. And if you even follow the city council candidates' responses, they have made it very clear that we have to be able to listen to employees. They have to be heard. They should not be afraid. This is what the council members who were just elected have been saying. And the questions posed to the mayor and the council were without a doubt very pointed, that things have to change. The employees are afraid.
You were born and raised here.
I was.
Did you ever think that you'd be running for mayor of the city that you grew up in?
Not when I was young and growing up, but I always knew I was one of those kids growing up that always loved Idaho Falls. I was not one who was eager to get out and go away and not come back, but my life experiences allowed me to leave for a while as I was coaching college basketball, but I made a distinct decision to come back because I love Idaho Falls, and I'd always missed it. I loved particularly the people. But we have a beautiful city, and I have been so honored just to serve on the city council, and it's humbling to run for mayor. It's humbling to run, but it's humbling to be in this position right now, truly knowing that in 4 weeks I could be the mayor of Idaho Falls.
So the mayor expressed concerns that the campaign may have turned a little negative. What's your thought on that?
Boy, I sure hope people didn't get confused with the campaign that was running at the same time.
That anybody but Casper won?
Correct. Because I think that had absolutely nothing to do with our campaign. My campaign was about differentiating myself between the mayor. Let's be honest, if I were to run and let you all know, I've had a great 4 years sitting on the city council. I've learned so much. I would be a fantastic mayor. I'm a great leader. That doesn't differentiate me from the mayor. Why then? Because people would say, well, that's Mayor Casper too. So why should we change? There's no reason to change. I believe it's incumbent on the challenger to present the case as to why there needs to be a change. Because certainly the incumbent is not going to present that case. The burden all falls to me. And as I said, just campaigns by their inherent nature are tough. And I can see where people, when they don't understand, when subjects are presented in disagreement, they automatically paint that as being negative. I have done nothing but talk about the policies and that which the mayor has done, which when you're serving the city of Idaho Falls or any constituent as an elected official, what you do in that office is open for scrutiny. And if you abuse it or misuse it, it should be pointed out. I know this sounds odd. Some people don't realize that we took an oath when we were elected to uphold the Constitution of the United States. And to me, what that means is government in its most inherent and pure form as a representative republic for the people. That is what I promised and swore to uphold. I believe in that. And anything that gets in the way of preventing us from being your representatives needs to be stopped. And that's what I have tried to do. I have not tried to be negative. I have tried to point out the differences. If people understand those differences going forward, I suppose I can talk more about me and my leadership ability and why I love Idaho Falls. But again, I'm sure people say, well, the mayor does too. So I don't know, pointing out the differences, I think that's inherent and incumbent on me.
What have you learned serving on the city council?
Oh man, I've learned that I've had confirmed what I thought, that we have some fantastic people in Idaho Falls, and that was one of the main reasons why I wanted to return, because of the people. I love the area, but what makes Idaho Falls is the people. We're unique. We live in a unique part of the country. I think people here really will reach out and help one another. When they know that there's a problem, they rise up. That doesn't happen everywhere. I know in times of distress, great distress, it can, but I've learned that there's a lot that goes into making our city work. Certainly, I knew when I was elected that there would be a ton of information and things which I didn't know, but until you don't know what you don't know, until you're right there and you're like, wow, I was right. There's a lot of information here, but you just get to work. You roll your sleeves up and you get to work and you start to learn, and it's great. It's, again, I love this city.
I want to ask you about a few quick kind of hot topics.
All right.
The school bond.
Uh-huh.
Your thoughts? It failed. Should there be another one?
Well, definitely something needs to be done. How they go about doing that, I'm not sure. I haven't put a ton of extra time into that because of my focus, but have had a couple conversations, and I think Deidre Warden and the board will, if they're not already meeting, they'll do the right thing. They'll figure it out. I have complete trust in they're moving forward.
It is one of those issues that the mayor really doesn't have a role in, but
correct.
Other than voting, yes or no.
That's correct.
The state of the Idaho Falls Police Department.
Yes. Well, the state of Idaho Falls Police Department certainly has gotten better with our new police chief, and I am absolutely thrilled about that. So my communications with the FOP has been that they're pleased. They wish it could have happened sooner. They feel like they're still behind the 8 ball because of all of the wasted time, but they're trying to, go forward too. They're pleased with Chief Johnson. I think we all are.
Business growth in the city versus the county. out in Ammon and other places.
Sure. That's one of those things that I've been saying. Of course, there's growth. No one's disputing the fact that there's growth, but there's a lot more growth. Ammon's growing at double the rate. And you can, just the eyeball test tells you that at some point we need to have the conversation as to why and why the county and Ammon is growing at such a fast rate. And I still believe that conversation needs to be one that's had with the council. But I will say this, if you look back, and this is from our own Brad Kramer, looking at our own statistics, if you look at the Idaho Falls growth rate, okay, and this is consistent 5, 10, 15, 40 years back, what people don't understand is that Idaho Falls is an anomaly and has consistently grown at 1 to 1.5% a year, period. So we are, those cities and the county around us are growing at a much faster rate, and I think we need to talk about that.
And how would you plan to get more businesses here in the city rather than heading, to the other side of Hit Road?
Yeah. Well, again, as I had stated a few times, I would like to have a conversation with our businesses, and I mean a conversation hosted, invited, like, the Energy Forum, where they come and we actually ask the tough questions, and our council is there so that we can say, what is it that's important to you? And even our businesses who have left. There's been some recent conversation with some of these businesses that have left a great big box in the middle of our city right now, empty, and why they have left. And I'm telling you, without fail, their first or second reason for leaving has been taxes. So we need to have that discussion. Where can we find that happy medium? Because taxes serve a purpose, but raising them every year doesn't help everybody. And the city has, this is the other thing we have to remember, Nate, the city has a healthy budget. We really do. We are doing some good things. We are also doing some things that could maybe be put off because they're, again, wants versus needs. And I'm just amazed that we've gone this long with some really nice wants, and we've left some needs. Everything from the aquatics center, which I've been asking for a long time. People forget, I used to work for the city of Idaho Falls as a youth. I even managed the old Elm Street swimming pool, outdoor swimming pool, which I absolutely love, which is now covered by the parking lot of the YMCA. That was a phenomenal facility, and then we built the aquatic center. I want to have some facilities for our youth, and I'd love to have an outdoor pool, big one. Not necessarily a water park, but a big outdoor pool. Why are we letting our stuff run into the ground? Why are we doing that? Why are we not discussing this? Why have we not upgraded some of the ball fields at a fairly inexpensive price? Why are we allowing the sewage to leak in the bottom of the basement of the police building? Why are we doing this, and yet we're building more parks? Why are we doing that? Those are questions that I want to address because I see things differently.
You mentioned taxes. That was my next question. The taxes here, the tax rate. Your thoughts on that?
Well, ultimately, the tax rate is probably what the businesses will complain most about. So I just know that there's been the argument that, when it comes to the homeowners, they haven't been hurt by the increase in taxes. And I say, no, they really haven't, because they've been offset by the homeowners exemption at the state level. However, the businesses have been hurt, and the businesses are the ones that carry the burden. But what's interesting, and the people forget this, is that ultimately the businesses will pass that back on to us. And so we're kind of in a quandary here where until we see our stagnant wages increase, the burden continues to grow on most everybody who lives in the city limits. How do we continue to provide for families, to provide for even some of the niceties that people want when taxes are going up, when healthcare costs are going up? There's huge talk among the insurance industry that we're going to see auto insurance skyrocket here pretty soon. How do we continue to demand more from our citizens when it comes to the city government? We want them to maintain a tight budget. Are we looking at what we're doing? Anyway, they're just questions, but the council should be engaged in that discussion.
I asked the mayor to say something positive about you. She said you used to run into each other at Walmart late at night. What's something positive that you would say about Mrs. Casper?
Without a doubt, the mayor works hard. She does. She spends a lot of time working. I think it's part of her model, and so you certainly can't fault her work ethic. So I definitely think she has a good work ethic.
I imagine you'll be going full speed over the next few weeks till December the 5th. I want to give you a chance to tell whoever didn't vote. We had around 11,000 people that voted out of the 40,000 adults. So a quarter of the population went out to the polls. There's probably people watching that didn't vote or that may have voted for someone else. What would your message be for them?
I would absolutely encourage you to continue to become informed. The reasons I'm running is because I love Idaho Falls. I want to make it better, and the way we make it better is to engage your council members, to engage all elected officials. These decisions are too big and too important to be made by one person, and that's what's being done. I want our council involved, and by involving the council, that gives you more people with whom you can speak, to voice your concerns, to be heard. And we have other things that we plan to do, including listening sessions and really to engage the people. So I would encourage you, if you didn't vote last time, we need you to come out and vote in 3.5 weeks on December 5th.
All right. Well, Barbara Ehardt is here with us today, along with Mayor Casper in the first segment, both of them running for Idaho Falls Mayor. The election is December the 5th, not a normal election day. So we would encourage you, if you live in the city of Idaho Falls, to go out and vote for one of these two candidates. And we will hopefully be holding a debate here in the next few weeks to talk about a few more of the issues. Thank you so much for watching East Idaho Newsmakers. Have a good week.
East Idaho Newsmakers is brought to you by the Bank of Commerce, your bank of a lifetime.